Hello, everyone. This is Frank DeMar with the End Times Research Ministry. Today is May the 19th of 2016. I'd like to focus on a couple prophecies today and connect the dots between what you're reading in the news compared to what the Bible has to say concerning events that were going to be played out in the last days. I think you're going to find this very interesting. In order for me to connect the dots, you need to know what God had to warn us about these last days. So let me begin with First Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3 because it talks about a time where you're going to hear this call for peace and safety. Look what it says. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Now, in this prophecy, obviously, we're supposed to be looking for a time when they're actually calling for peace and safety. And when this call goes out, we know that there is going to be war, some kind of destruction, because it says right there in the scriptures that there is the sudden destruction that's going to come. Now, what is the sudden destruction? Well, when you take a look at another prophecy that hasn't been fulfilled, and that prophecy is in Psalm 83. That's a war against Israel that hasn't been fulfilled yet. And so let me just cover that very briefly. It says, keep not thou silent, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, of course, we're talking about Israel, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. So what we do know is Israel is going to have an enemy. They are going to invade Israel, at least make an attempt to invade Israel, to destroy the nation of Israel. A confederate army will come together in the last days to try to take out Israel in really short terms. Now on the right hand side you'll see a photo of the picture of the East Gate that I took when I was in Israel, but I put the enemies that are listed in the Psalm 83 war in there to make it very visible for you so that you'll know exactly who it is that's coming against Israel. So what we do know is, according to scripture, Edom is actually today's the Palestinians and South Jordan, or the South Jordanians. The Ishmaelites obviously is Saudi Arabia. Number four, the Hagarite, and they're actually of today the Hagarenes, which would be the Egyptians, and Gabal are today's Hezbollah. Keep in mind on the left-hand side, those are the Old Testament names, and on the right-hand side, I'm giving you the modern-day names. So Hezbollah, and they're also North Lebanese. Amen are the Palestinians and North Jordanians. Amalek are the Arabs of the Sinai area. Keep these in mind. Philistina are the people of the modern day Hamas of the Gaza Strip. Tyre is today's Hezbollah and South Lebanese. And Assyria are today's Syrians and North Iraqi. So those are the people that we know are involved in this confederacy that will be coming against Israel. Now, in our generation, what do we see taking place with these nations, the same nations that are listed in the Psalm 83? Well, one thing in common they have is they're starting to be invaded by ISIS, the Islamic right-wing extremist Islamic group that wants to go out and destroy anybody who doesn't believe in their philosophy. Now, just because the nations are listed in the Psalm 83, for example, in number 2, Saudi Arabia, it doesn't actually have to be that all of Saudi Arabia as an entity, as a nation, will come against Israel. It is the possibility that ISIS, who infiltrates into these areas, will come together from these different areas that we see mentioned in the Psalm 83. So in other words, we've already seen ISIS go into Syria. They're still fighting there. We've also seen ISIS go into Iraq. They've made moves into Lebanon. They're already into the Sinai. They're in many of the nations that are listed here. So when the war takes place against Israel, there is a good possibility that it will be ISIS who's involved in this war that comes from each one of these nations that are listed in the Psalm 83 war. That is a possibility. Now, currently, we're hearing a lot of news about what's going on in number one, Iraq, because ISIS is very, very aggressive in Iraq, and also in Syria. They moved into the Sinai as well, positioning themselves to do what? Well, obviously, if you've been following the news, to attack Israel. Now, obviously, if the Lord warned us that when you hear this verbiage about peace and safety, you should be raising your ears to that, because this is a warning sign that the sudden destruction is going to be coming. So this is where it gets very interesting. Now, on May 11th, I gave you this article, but I need to give it again in case some of the people had missed it. And I'm also going to add something to this because it becomes very important when you put this article together with the new one that just came out. And of course, this is from the Decca file. ISIS to Israel, we're coming very soon. The last 48 hours, May 7th through the 8th, have seen a major escalation of the ISIS threats against Israel. Decca's files, intelligence and counterterrorism sources report. In a coordinated maneuver by all of the ISIS commands in the Middle East, the terrorist organization simultaneously received at least 10 videos that it said showed ISIS forces on their way to attack targets in Israel. So this is why I told you that it is a possibility that it doesn't have to be each independent nation listed in Psalm 83, but it could be the forces that are in those areas. It goes on to say all of the videos refer to the Palestinian issue. Of course, we know that Palestinian is from the Gaza described in Psalm 83. So let's continue. I'll read this again. All of the videos refer to the Palestinian issue, Jerusalem, and the timing of the attacks. In each one, the narrator claims the terror organization did not forget the Palestinians and will not neglect them anymore, describes Jerusalem as a bridge to Islam, and threatens an impending attack, saying, "We're coming and coming very soon," accompanied by images of fighters from the ISIS affiliate in the Sinai are shown. Again, Sinai, where's that? Egypt. Just like Psalm 83 indicate. The article goes on. It was not the first time for the ISIS propaganda machine to threaten hostilities against Israel, but it was the first time for the threat to be issued simultaneously from every province or city where ISIS is located in the Middle East. The videos included ones from Raqqa, the ISIS capital in Syria, Mosul, the terrorist organization capital in Iraq, the Sinai Peninsula, and Egypt, all of which, by the way, are mentioned in the Psalm 83 war, Darna in eastern Libya, and central Libya, where, according to Decca files counterterrorism sources, ISIS controls a huge 300-kilometer area, including the Mediterranean coast on the coast of Sidra. Our sources report that every video contains the following sentences. We know that the Egyptian army is being helped by Israeli intelligence and the Israeli Air Force in its war against us. We also know that Israel set up intelligent networks within the population of the Bedouin tribes in the Sinai, and again, in Egypt. And from now on, we will take action against Egyptian and Israeli targets as one. So what do we have here in short? We have a growing terrorist organization moving into the very nations described in Psalm 83. And for the first time, simultaneously, they're all saying at the same time, we're going after Israel. It sounds just like what we read from Psalm 83 war, considering ISIS is in the majority of the nations that are listed in that Psalm 83 war. So now let's go to the current news so I can add something to this, and I'll show you how it's connected to the call for peace and safety. So the following news broke today, May 19th of 2016. You can see where it came from. Breaking Israel news. ISIS, radical Islam, will invade Israel if peace talks fail, Abbas warns. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who aren't following the news and may have come across my YouTube channel that are listening maybe for the first time about Psalm 83 and the connection between the call for peace and safety in the last days. Maybe you don't know who these people are, but Abbas is the leader of the Palestinian organization who is in the Gaza Strip. They are the PLO, just like we see in the Psalm. Now, he is warning that if the peace talks fail, there's going to be war. That's what he's saying. So essentially what he is saying is the exact same thing that we see warning from Psalm 83. The article says Palestinian Authority PA chairman Mahmoud Abbas called on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Tuesday to accept a French initiative to revive peace talks between the two parties, Breitbart reported. Speaking to a delegation from Israel's left-wing Meretz party in Ramallah, Abbas warned that not doing so would bring the Islamic State, ISIS, to Israel. Now, you already saw the article. It says, we're coming soon. I can't tell you if ISIS is waiting to see if it collapses or not, this peace talk that they're talking about in this article, but it may be. It's possible that that's what they're doing. But what we do know from previous articles is they couldn't attack Israel until they got close enough surrounding Israel, and that was one of their goals, is to get closer and then attack. So all of these things are coming together, but obviously they're all coming together to eventually fulfill the Psalm 83 war. The article goes on to say, if we don't revive the peace process, the violence and radicalism from Syria will come here, Abbas said. The Islamic State and the Al-Nusra Front will reach Israel and the West Bank. Abbas acknowledged that Palestinian education is replete with messages inciting hatred of Israel and Jews. Yes, there is incitement in our textbooks and on television. In other words, they are teaching their kids to hate Israel, to attack Israel. It's been a bad cycle repeated over and over again. This problem, however, is surmountable. Let's solve the problem and revive the incitement commission that was agreed upon between Israel and the PA 16 years ago. The commission, which is chaired by the United States, will determine what needs to be corrected, Abbas said. And of course, if you know anything about Israel and the United States relationships since Barack Hussein Obama was elected president, you know that it's deteriorated like we've never seen of any president before. So Israel cannot rely on anything that the United States wants to do when it comes to a peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. Abbas asked Netanyahu to ignore all that and return to the negotiation table anyway. Hypocritically, he urged Netanyahu to forego any preconditions. Just in case you don't know, one of the preconditions from Israel was that the PLO recognize Israel as a nation, because Israel is not, to this point, not recognized by the Palestinians to be a legitimate nation in the Middle East. So Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, said there's no way we're going to be talking peace unless first they negotiate. And he made it very, very clear that that is never going to change. And of course, that's exactly what Abbas wants them to do. He wants to abandon that. Look what it says. Let's leave everything in the past and let's meet, Abbas continued. When two sides are invited to a meeting, one cannot present preconditions. It's the international community that should determine what is right and what isn't. Now, the international community is coming against Israel, and I'll cover a little bit about that as we go on. He later added, put all that aside and let's negotiate. We aren't far apart physically, and we cooperate on a daily basis. Don't push us to the wall. We will all lose. While Abbas will not explain why PA refused to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, he had harsh words for the expansion of settlements in Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel. The Israeli government is building settlements on Palestinian land, Abbas said. We will not agree to a situation whereby a new settlement and new checkpoint are cropping up all the time. The entire world is against settlements. I want to stop it right there because I told you I was going to cover how everybody's coming against Israel. Take a look at this. The prophet Zechariah told us what was going to happen in the last days. Zechariah 12:3 says this, "And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." So just like the call for peace and safety, the warning that Israel will be attacked, the warning everybody's going to be coming against Israel. And that's exactly what's taking place. So when we read in this report that the entire world is against the settlements, this just goes parallel to all the warnings that we see in the scriptures. It goes on. This is the position taken by the Americans and the Europeans. There have been 12 Security Council resolutions against settlements. Stop them, he continued. While Netanyahu has opposed and proposed peace conference in Paris, telling French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault the only way forward is direct negotiation, Abbas praised the plan. The French plan is a good one since we want the international community to take responsibility for this endless conflict, Abbas said. Abbas said, "We want the whole world by our side." And obviously he meant to say world, but he put word in this article. It was a mistake. "We are one of the last remaining nations that suffer under military occupation. How much longer will this go on? How much longer will the world permit one country to control another?" Now the situation in the Middle East is dire. There's no question about that. But that situation can change. All it has to happen is the leader of the Palestinian organization, as you see here, Abbas, all he has to do is recognize the nation of Israel. Say that we recognize that you exist here. That's not going to change. And then they can move on. But that's never going to happen. And Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli prime minister, is not going to cave into that. Because that means, without the recognition of the nation of Israel, that they will continue to be attacked. So the warning about this radical Islam that's already in many of those territories that are mentioned in Psalm 83, they're hooked now with the peace talks that are failing. And there is that good possibility, and I've always believed this, that the breakdown of the peace talks could launch the Psalm 83 war, of which ISIS is in all those territories. Will ISIS fulfill their promise, as this Decca file said back in May of 2016, as they said that they're coming to attack Israel soon? I believe that ISIS, no doubt, is going to try to fulfill their pledge and at least try to show the world that they're going to take out the nation of Israel. Now, for those that are watching Bible prophecy unfold, what we should be watching then is, we know attack is coming. That's for sure. Psalm 83 war is emphatic about that. We already know that all the prophecies come to pass, and so this prophecy too will come to pass. Will it be all of the nations combined together as their sovereign nations? What I mean is, will it be all of the Arabs living in the Sinai, or if you want to say the Egyptians, or will it just be the ISIS forces in Egypt? Will it be all of Lebanon, or will it be just the ISIS forces in Lebanon? Only God knows how the final outcome will be, but what we do know is those territories will be coming down against Israel in the last days. So let's watch and see if ISIS tries to make good on their promise to attack Israel, because if they do, I could tell you before it happens, ISIS is going to be wiped out. Israel will take a blow, but ISIS will be taken out. They will not defeat, they will not drive Israel to the sea as they hope that they would. But here's the bottom line. The Lord told us when they're talking peace and safety, sudden destruction's coming. We are already seeing the verbiage about the call for peace and safety. And we're also seeing the warning, we're coming after the nation of Israel. The same things indicated in prophecy. The question is, are you going to believe the word of the Lord? Are you going to believe what God is showing us before it happens? Because the events that you're watching are the prelude to finish the prophecies that haven't been fulfilled. This is Frank DeMora with the End Times Research Ministry, asking you to consider what God is showing you today and ask Him to be your Savior before it's too late. God bless.